Earlier today, in the Eastern District of New York, a complaint was unsealed charging 2 PRC intelligence officers with attempting to obstruct, influence, and impede a criminal prosecution of a PRC-based telecommunications company.
You just heard from United States Attorney General Merrick Garland, who spoke at a very stern press conference earlier today. Now, he explained to the American people that US intelligence has unveiled 3 separate cases of Chinese spies operating in the United States. Now, we'll talk about the implications and what the actual motivations are for this announcement and this press conference. But first, let me give you the details about what the allegations are, and then we can get to the ramifications. Now, in total, Merrick Garland revealed that the United States Department of Justice has charged 13 individuals for trying to, quote, unlawfully exert influence in the United States on behalf of China. Those 13 individuals were charged in 3 separate cases. Now let's get to the cases. One case charges 7 Chinese nationals of trying to forcefully repatriate a Chinese national. 4 others were charged in an intelligence scheme that allegedly targeted individuals in the United States to act on China's behalf. And 2 other men were charged with interfering in a United States criminal prosecution of a global telecommunications company. Now, Garland did not specifically cite the company involved in the last case, but NBC News reports that the details of the complaint match a lawsuit against Huawei. And that is, of course, a massive Chinese telecommunications company. And we had previously arrested one of the executives for Huawei. So I want to give you the rest of the story in just a moment. But before I do, Cenk, do you want to weigh in?
I do, and that's why I unmuted. Okay, so number one, isn't it interesting? It depends on what the country is for the reaction, the political reaction that you get.
Yes.
So this case looks like it's got very good evidence. You never know until you go to court. But good, I'm glad they brought it. But I'm unbiased. I don't care if it's China or any other country. Do I want them spying in and trying to influence criminal investigations and other government proceedings? No, of course not. Why would I want any other country to do that? I wouldn't want it if it was Canada, right? But let's assume for a second that it was Russian companies that had done this and Russian nationals. What would have been the reaction? The right wing would have been like, oh, Russia, 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 no way, man. No, the poor Russians didn't do it. The Democrats are trying to use this for the Russia hoax. Wait, but did you even look at that evidence, right? But that's what the reaction would have been. If it was Israel, they wouldn't even have the press conference. Saudi Arabia, they wouldn't have had the press conference. So those are our beloved allies that need to be protected no matter what they do wrong, right? So both the reaction of the Democrats and the Republicans are totally based on which country it is.
No, 100%, 100%. And I mean, Cenk, the thing about the individuals who would be upset about the investigation or criminal charges against Russian nationals would have a point because it would just amount to McCarthyite smears. That's it. That's all it would be. Anyway.
No matter what it is, when it comes to Russia, it doesn't matter. It's the way that Putin is killing people in Russia is hilarious. Like one guy tripped over a bathtub and fell out a window.
Oh, you mean the excuses or the cover story is hilarious and ridiculous, and you can't believe it, obviously.
Yeah, of course. There's another guy who was in a hospital and he somehow magically got up and he also tripped outside a window and fell out of it. It's amazing.
A lot of tripping going on. Tripping going on.
Tons of tripping. They're tripping for sure in Russia. Anyway, every time a story like that comes out, both the right wing and the fake left go, Joe McCarthyite smear. But nobody's yelling McCarthyite smear about China in this case. Why? Because China's apparently not bribing enough media pundits on the right wing and the fake left.
Well, sure. I think that's a decent point to make. The other thing is, in terms of the 2 political parties, you don't really have a lot of disagreement in regard to having a more hawkish take on China. Both Democrats and Republicans are incredibly hawkish toward China. In fact, I remember during the political campaigning for Joe Biden and Donald Trump, they were trying to outdo one another over who would be the most hawkish toward China, which I think has some consequences that are worth discussing. Now, back to the conference though, because during this press conference with Merrick Garland, he also featured a lot of chest puffing. So we have a compilation of that. Let's take a look.
The Department of Justice will not tolerate threats from a foreign power to the rights of Americans or to our nation's institutions. In the words of our intelligence community, China seeks to be a major power on the world stage and to challenge the United States in multiple arenas.
So, there's multiple things going on as well, because there's the economic competition with China that plays a role. There's also the rhetoric coming from Biden's administration and Biden himself in regard to how far the United States is willing to go to ensure that Taiwan, remains independent of China's government. And that continues to escalate tensions. And earlier this month, by the way, the Biden administration had placed the following export restrictions on the semiconductor chip technology from China. Per the new controls, the United States will no longer permit chip making equipment or certain chips, notably those for supercomputing and artificial intelligence, to be exported to Chinese companies. Let's go to graphic 6 here. 31 Chinese firms have been added to the Bureau of Industry and Security's unverified list, which makes it more difficult to send items to the listed entities that are US made or produced with US supply chain links, including foreign made products created using technology that originated in the United States. And look, I just find the spat with China fascinating, especially when you consider the fact that we played a huge role in strengthening their economy through, free trade deals, through essentially allowing US-based companies and corporations to outsource manufacturing jobs to exploit Chinese labor. They would send their intellectual property there because obviously they would need to do so in order for the workers there to, manufacture the products that we typically would have manufactured here in the United States. And then US companies cry about all sorts of like intellectual property theft and things like that. I mean, we did this, and now that the chickens have come home to roost, it's just fascinating to watch both political parties cry about it.
Yeah, and of course, they want to protect corporations in both directions, right? Both the Republicans and the Democrats, in that they wanted to let them outsource all their jobs, and they don't want to tell you that that's the actual problem, right? And then when the corporations get cheated by China, they need to be, stand up for those beloved corporations that are their donors against China. And that's why you hear all the tough talk from Republicans and Democrats. So that's clear. And look, I respect China's game, but it's a little old school. So they do things behind the scenes. They try all these different things. They send in spies, etc. They're not as loud as China, but they're very effective in the long run. They just keep going and going and going. Now, having said that, what I'm really worried about is that they're gonna update their game and then we're gonna be really screwed. Because if they update their game, what they're gonna do is the Russian way, right? So, and by the way, not just Russian, again, Saudi, Israeli, etc. So the Saudis funnel money to Republicans through guys like Norm Coleman, who's a former Republican senator, and they give him the money and then he gives them Republican senators giants amount of money, so they never question the Saudis. They could set up Democratic majority for China as they set up Democratic majority for Israel, and that way you influence all the primaries on the Democratic side, and then you could do Patreon and Twitter trolls and bots, and you get a bunch of right wing and pretend left wingers on your side, and then you'll have propaganda wall to wall in your behalf. Any country can come and buy American media and buy American politicians. Once the Chinese find that out, we're all screwed. So that's what's coming next.
They know, believe me, they know. So yeah, I mean, there's already some of that going on, Cenk. But fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, I want everyone to understand, I'm not in any way trying to provide cover for Chinese spies who have been charged with, these crimes. But the point that I do want to make is take a step back, look at the bigger picture, and look at how the United States government, under the leadership of either political party, has been more and more antagonistic toward China. And it's the case at a time when we still rely on China for a great deal of our imports because so many of our products are manufactured there. So like, it's just, I don't know, it's just a disaster. It is a mess, and I don't think that we should, continue poking the bear. We should be thinking about diplomatic relations. And if you want to do this investigation, you've filed these criminal charges, the chest puffing and the theatrics, I think, are not helpful.
Yeah, and so last note on that. The idea that Merrick Garland's a tough guy is hilarious. So he puffs his chest when there's no domestic political opponent. Both the Republicans and Democrats want to be tough against China, so he pretends he's tough, right? But this idiot didn't charge Trump for 2 straight years, because my best guess is the Democratic Party wanted to just use the threat of charges as political propaganda, but Merrick Garland is too much of a coward to actually charge Trump. But ironically now, the Republicans say, hey, if we ever get a hold of Congress, which they're very likely to do soon, we're going to impeach Garland and maybe imprison him. Okay, so hey, Merrick Garland, your cowardice is going to have that at the end of the rainbow. I hope you enjoy, and no one's buying your fake tough guy act against China. All you're doing is trying to placate American corporations. Yes, you should pursue this case, but spare us the rest.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.